Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Dr. C Spills the Medical Tea. Today, we have a special episode for you pre-meds out there, and it really applies to anyone who's going into an interview process. But for pre-meds, you really need to get your interviews right. So it's going to be tips for residency interviews, med school interviews, and even your first job as an attending. So let's get started. We have Dr. Maxine Velasquez here with us today.
Happy to be here with you.
We are UCLA med school alums. We went to UCLA Prime, not together, but we both went to the same program, and UCSF family medicine program.
Yes.
So let's get started with some interview tips. So I have some that I remember from when I was going through the process. So you just let me know if you agree.
Yes.
So I think the number one tip is to record yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are going to see so many things that I know when I started recording myself and I would look at it, I was like, why do I look so mad?
Yes.
So I thought I need to smile more. I need to breathe and slow down. And I need to practice more because I'm not entirely sure what I'm saying. So do you agree with that tip?
Absolutely. I think if you have someone you can practice with, then that's another way to get feedback about your tempo, your pace, how loud you're projecting or not, if you are stumbling,
exactly,
certain things that you maybe struggle with. And then I think for some people, even just practicing in your head or in front of the mirror could be enough, but recording is like gold standard.
Yes, I totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And the second tip that I would say is to prepare questions. So, such as looking up on Google, like what are some good medical school interview questions?
Yes. Yeah.
And even just coming up with your own, like any and all questions that you could ever think of that they would ask you.
Yeah.
Even like, what are your hobbies? Things like that.
Absolutely. There's different interview styles, like for medical school, right? The one-on-one traditional interview. And then there's like the mini multiple interviews. So you can Google all of these examples and practice like ethical questions, which might,
the ethical questions
might be difficult in person. Yeah. So thinking about them ahead of time, and then everyone should be able to say, what's your path to medicine? Why do you choose medicine? Tell me about a strength. Tell me about a weakness.
Those are like basic. You have to get those ones down.
Definitely.
Did you get any curveballs that you remember on your interviews?
I mean, the MMI stuff, the ethical questions were really, those ones, I didn't throw me off. I just thought they were really challenging. And so my takeaway and little hot extra tip would be, there isn't always a right answer. Any answer could be right with the right justification.
Okay.
So I think for like ethical questions, especially, it's not so much like, do I know the right answer? It's saying, these are the tools I would look into. This is the way I would approach it.
I love that script.
Yeah. So giving yourself, giving the person interviewing an insight into your thought process
rather than like trying to get the right answer.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, sure, it would be nice if you did know it, but in reality, we, look things up, and whenever we're faced with an ethical dilemma, you're getting advice.
So true. I remember when I interviewed at a place that had MMI, one of the faculty asked me, do you believe it's okay for doctors to get like free trips from pharmaceutical companies? This was when I was very opposed to it. Now I'd be like, okay, I want to go to Hawaii. This is where I would go.
There might be a right answer for that question.
There might be a right answer for that one. But I was like, okay, so you always need to remember, like, where am I interviewing?
Yes.
Like, is this a school that would probably want, are they going to be, is this like a private school that, they are probably going to be more lenient towards donations or things like that? But I was interviewing at all state schools. I knew that they were already like ideologically opposed to kickbacks and things like that. So I remember some advice that I got was the same thing. It was, show your thought process, because it also allows them to learn more about you rather than just like, oh, this is what I believe in. So I told them, I can see how that would be beneficial because it would supplement students and physicians learning. It would improve maybe their knowledge base of certain medications and networking. However, I do think that because there are studies that show that it does influence prescribing, I am opposed to donations or gifts to physicians over a certain amount of money.
Oh my God, perfect answer. People are going to steal this.
And then he said, so that means you're unequivocally opposed to gifts. And then I said, what does unequivocally mean? But he thought it was charming. I really was not doing it to be charming, but that's also another point is like, if you don't know something, you can totally ask to clarify. Yes. Like, don't pretend you need to know everything. Mm-hmm. And then I always recommend to pre-meds to read a book or two on medical ethics.
Yes.
Just to get the foundational principles like dignity, mm-hmm. And just have like a core principles that you know in your back pocket, so you can say, even if you don't know the answer, you can apply these rules of ethics.
I think I Wikipedia'd it and had just like a quick note because it was like hard for me to remember.
Yes.
So I just wanted to be refreshed on that. Yeah.
And you don't need to be like a scholar in it.
No.
Just literally memorize like 5.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to expect you to write a thesis on it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
What's our next tip?
Our next tip would be to plan your outfit.
You
came up with this one, of course.
I think it was present yourself professionally.
Okay.
So I think for many, when we're thinking college students, right? Like this might be the biggest interview you've had if you're going straight through. So medicine is still a conservative field. There is an expectation that people wear suits. Most 20-something-year-olds don't own a suit. So I think it's, don't wait till the last minute. Think ahead, get something that fits you, that you feel comfortable in. Interview days are really long. And
comfortable shoes.
Comfortable shoes. This is not the time to like buy some like new high heel that you've never walked in, and then you're interviewing on the East Coast in snow, So,
oh my God, I almost slipped because you know me, I always wear heels no matter what.
So I brought snowshoes when I did that.
And I changed into the heels. Podcast. I interviewed at Rush in Chicago, and I remember I stepped out of the van in my high heels, and I was like, I did not plan for this. Thank goodness I didn't fall, but if I would have done it again, I would have got something with like grips.
Yes.
Or just changed my shoes.
Yeah. So I think it's something we don't always think about, but I think, I'm like a planner. So I'm like, what am I going to wear? Like, how far do I have to walk? And you can just email people and say, do you recommend bringing an extra pair of shoes? A lot of places will tell you.
True.
They'll tell you to bring tennis shoes. We're going to be going on a long walk. It's such a stressful day. The last thing you want is to be physically uncomfortable. So
Absolutely.
That's what I meant with that rule. It's like kind of thinking about how you're going to present yourself, feeling comfortable, and dressing for the occasion.
I would say on interviews, I always go for, I want to be memorable, but I don't want to like stand out in a bad way. Yeah. So I saw these people that would wear these like red suits or like Dumb and Dumber type suits. And I was like, read the room, be professional. But if you want to wear a black suit and then have like a nice scarf in your hair or a nice scarf on your bag, like something that stands out, I think that those are like little ways that you can really make a good impression and be memorable without sticking out in a bad way.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe some people do want to stand out, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You will stand out.
I think it just makes me think of psychiatry, because when I was on my psychiatry rotations, like everyone dressed so uniquely.
Yeah.
That I think that was like the culture.
Yes.
So I think there's definitely more room for like self-expression in different specialties.
Yeah.
But for the most part, East Coast.
Yeah, there's a geographic component
geographical
to this.
components. If you're on the East Coast, a lot of times they expect women to wear skirts.
Yeah.
So, play the rules.
Yeah.
You gotta like adhere to that.
Did you have a skirt suit?
Honestly, I don't remember. Yeah, I think I did. I always try to be feminine.
I did pants, and then for residency, I was like, I am over this suit situation. I think
really
I bought a dress to wear with the blazer and then chickened out in the end and just wore a regular suit.
I think I ended up having like a pantsuit and a skirt suit because it was just like, for med school and residency too, there was like quite a bit of interviews. So I felt like I needed like a second outfit.
Yeah.
All right. So what about day of? So you're super excited. You get your interview for med school and you're like, I'm one step closer. You got your outfit, you prepared, you did your videos, and
you're feeling good.
What do you recommend for people on the day of when they like wake up?
Yeah. So, plan ahead, have like a good routine, know where you're going, have some food, all of those little details, but review your own information.
Oh my gosh.
Review your personal statement because people will ask about it sometimes. If there's like a secondary, just like look back on it. Everything's digital. You can have it on your phone. Looking through your CV or your application.
And being like, what a badass I am.
Yes.
My gosh, look what I've done.
Yes. But hype yourself up if you can. And then even like looking through those little tips we talked about, like the medical ethics stuff.
Review your notes.
Yeah, whatever notes you've taken to help prepare, just like give it a glance. You really should already know that stuff because it's true and it's coming from you. But, sometimes we need a reminder.
It never hurts. It's kind of like walking in right before tests and just reviewing your notes. It's like fresh in your mind. And I would say when you are in the interview, I see a big tendency for people to lead with what they're most insecure about on their application because they're going in there thinking, oh, I hope they don't ask me about my gap year.
Yeah.
So when they're in there, they go, so I had to take a year off because my grandfather got sick and then blah, blah, blah. And then now you're just like leading with the not so positive aspects of your application. So I would say focus on the things you're most proud of and lead with that. You don't need to mention any of the like negative aspects of your application unless they specifically ask you.
Yeah.
And if they do ask you, then you want to be prepared with like how you transmuted that into something really meaningful.
Yeah, this isn't an autobiography. This is a snapshot and
that's a really good point.
Story.
Yes.
And you're painting a picture for them and presenting yourself as a potential student or resident who's going to make their program shine. So if they want to know about your weakness or the most difficult thing you've experienced, they'll ask you.
Right. And be prepared to talk about it.
And give it a positive spin at the end.
And give it a positive spin. Exactly. Yeah. And I would say know the school that you're going to or the program you're going to. So if you know that they're big on community health, like highlight the parts of your research that, were in community health or the time that you worked at a free clinic. Or if they're big on research and you don't have any research, which was my case, then focus on a way that you can like get around it or
an idea you have. Like I think
really
it was we probably both experienced that with like big research schools. Like, I'm interested in this, or I've started looking into this, or I'd really love to combine this research thing with this other thing I'm interested in. So yeah, putting some thought into the school and having like a specific question about the program prepared so that they know that you're not just interviewing everywhere.
Right.
You're intentional.
Exactly. It's not just, I don't want to marry anybody. I want to go to your school because I want to marry you because of this.
Yes.
Like you're kind of courting them.
Absolutely.
They want to know that you are applying there for a reason. And so the third tip that we have for the day of is be kind to everybody.
Yes.
I think this is a huge thing because I know when I was working at UCLA Prep and we were helping PreMeds to get their applications ready, they would tell you, we get students all the time that they come in and they're super rude to the receptionist or even the janitor, which makes me mad to even think about, but like it happens.
Yeah. I mean, like if you're a jerk, like please show that you're a jerk so that you are not
That's
accepted.
True. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah. But I think most people are in their head anxious.
Yes. They may not even know how it comes across.
And so they're just like to themselves. But I think if you exude warmth and you have a smile or you make a friendly glance at somebody, then you're like welcoming them in and it feels less alone and hopefully more, of a community in this like one scary day. And then people pick up on that as well. They want to see that you're like a warm, inviting person that you're going to add to the class, saying thank you to everybody. I mean, these are all things people should already know how to do.
Right.
But if you're a little anxious, then just reminding yourself that you want to bring your best self to this experience.
I remember someone saying, you're not faking, but you're just showing up as your best self.
Yes.
Like it's still you.
Yeah.
But it's just the best version of you that you can possibly bring. So get plenty of rest.
Yes.
Eat breakfast in the morning, meditate, do whatever you need to do to get in the zone. And then, just be present, breathe.
Yes.
Look at your notes and you'll be fine.
Yeah. And, maybe you'll walk out with a friend or see this person later on.
Yes. That's the other thing is you will definitely see people on your interview trail, either in med school, in residency. Like I know I met a lot of people who I ended up seeing later at conferences. Like it's a very small world. So bring your best, most kind self. So I wanted to tell you this story. When I was interviewing for UCSF, I had a background where I was very much like Summer Bridge, ethnic studies, like very much like education should be for the people. Like the things that we research and things that we do in the university should directly affect like the public. And as of right now, it's sort of like an ivory tower. So that was like a big part of my application. So for whatever reason, I got paired with this interviewer who was like very ideologically opposed to like my activities and sort of the things that I was saying. Okay. And I remember just being in the interview and I could tell that I was like losing him and he was getting like kind of irritated with what I was saying. And so he told me at the end, he's like, so you think that everything in education should be like public benefiting, like so even if you discover something that only like the 1% can use, like that's not useful. And I said, no, it is useful. It's just I think more public dollars for education should be used towards public health rather than like very niche scientific advances that don't really help the general population, which a lot of people cannot even afford basic care. And he looked so angry.
Ooh, how did you come back from that?
I mean, I didn't get in. And I think I remember, I don't know how I found out, but I remember that the first interviewer of mine like loved me and the second one didn't, like just didn't sign off on me. Yeah. So I think that's just something you have to be aware of. I don't know that I would change anything. Yeah. Because that's just it was my stance. It was like my values. But it does go to show you that you are entering sometimes like a very specifically minded interviewer that doesn't represent maybe the school or the program. So I think if I were to do it now, I think I would have known, I would have seen, okay, he's not really vibing with what I'm saying. Maybe I'll pull back a little bit. Yeah. And adjust. But I think at that time I didn't really know how to pivot, I think. Yeah. I just knew what I wanted to say.
Yeah. I think a lot of medical training is adaptability. And so some interviews, I do feel like they almost are trying to see if you can adapt. Maybe not in this case.
Maybe he was like, I want her to see from a different perspective.
Yeah. And so I think that's a really good tip to have is like, don't compromise who you are, but sometimes you might have to like steer course a different way to, present an answer that is maybe a little bit more palatable or to show them that you're not, fixed in the way that you think.
Yes, I think that's true because God knows afterwards as a doctor, you're going to be faced with a lot of patients that are going to say things that you maybe don't agree with or that are offensive, and you need to keep your cool. And there's so many diplomatic ways to say the things that you want to say and choosing the right moment. So,
and as a doctor or a scientist, sometimes you have to say, I was wrong, like this was wrong, or the recommendations changed. Yeah. And so not being afraid to say that and take ownership of it.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully people listening benefit from my story. And
it's okay. You ended up where you were supposed to be.
Absolutely. I think everything ends up where you're supposed to be, and maybe it wasn't a good match. Yeah. That it was maybe too conservative of a place for me at that time. Yeah. But everything works out the way it's supposed to work out for sure.
And what are your thoughts on like you're interviewing the program? I feel like in medical school, it was like, no, desperate times, anybody who will take me, I will go. But then residency is a little different because you are a little bit more specialized in where you're going. And so you really do want to make sure it's a good match for you because it's going to be like 80-hour work weeks.
Right. No, that's so true. I think because I did UCLA prep where we got a lot of prep for the process, I remember them specifically telling me, you do want to interview them. Yeah. It's for everything in life. Like you want to make sure it's a good fit for you. So maybe you're not coming at it like, so tell me, like,
what can you do for me?
Yeah. What can you do for me, doc? Like maybe not that, but you definitely want to have your set of questions. Like if you're planning on having a family, ask them, like, what is your policy on women taking time off after pregnancy? What if I had a personal crisis come up? Like, would you make me start the whole year over again, or can students take breaks? Like, come in there with personalized questions to what you're most interested in.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would definitely recommend for every student to do, no matter what.
Knowing who to ask to, because maybe you don't ask that in your 10-minute interview, but you reach out to students, alum, and say, has anybody experienced this? What was their take? Because you do have to still be quite strategic for some of these interviews.
That's a good point. And you don't want to spend time in your one-on-one interview necessarily talking about that, because you want to showcase like your application. You want to maybe focus on like curriculum and opportunities, like academic opportunities. And then some of the other questions, like you were saying, can be great for those nights where you hang out with the residents.
Yeah.
Or you do like a second look.
Like, a little on the tour with, the volunteer student.
Yeah. They're more apt to answer the question. And also it won't come off like you're in your main interview being like, okay, well, I don't know if this is going to work for me because I have all these recommendations, all these like requirements. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Great tips. Anything else?
Trying to think of other like interview stories.
Did I have any good interview stories?
I just know I ended up picking programs because I interviewed with faculty and residents that I just loved. Like there was like an immediate connection, and like for the most part, all the schools I interviewed at, I would have been over the moon to get into those schools, and I had my favorites, but it was the ones where I almost like felt a belonging with the residents, or I felt a belonging with the faculty and the school in some way.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a
aligned values.
Yes. It's like a hard and soft type of like alignment of when you feel the vibe.
Yeah.
Would you say that's how you experience it too?
I would say for med school, I actually remember not loving my UCLA Prime interview.
Oh, really?
Like not feeling super connected. But like on paper, it felt like the best place for me. And then actually during the like pre-med process, when you're like going to conferences after you've interviewed, and then people are so nice and you're like, wait, like, oh, this is a different energy. So I actually probably would say the opposite. The places that I really wanted to go to, I ended up getting waitlisted. And I'm so glad that it like didn't work out, because it was the absolute best place for me. And I loved the program. So I think keeping an open mind and remembering your values. I knew on paper that like UCLA Prime was like all of the things that I wanted in medical school experience and leadership. But the day of, I don't know, for whatever reason, it felt a little stiff for me. And I'm so glad that I like actually disregarded that, because it was not the case in reality.
It's such a holistic process, because I think the actual interview day, they are trying to present like a very formal process. And so I think if you're someone like you and I, where we're like, yes, it checks all the boxes, but I want to feel at home in some way. I want to feel drawn to the program. That's why I think the second looks, hanging out, going to those like socials with the residents is so important. You can even tell on the residents' faces like if they hate the program. Like I don't know if you went to any of those socials.
Oh yes.
Where you at the end of it I was like, hell no.
Oh, for residency, I feel like that is more important, because it's so much smaller, and the culture is going to dictate so much of your training. That was very like, I loved my UCSF like social.
Same.
I felt like I couldn't talk to enough people. But I think for medical school, there's so many interviews that like, I felt like, if you interview late, which I think I did, I don't remember where I fell in the line, but there's just so many factors that could influence what kind of an energy is there, but you have the opportunity to do a second look. Which I did a second look for UCLA, and I was like, I'm so happy to be here.
I knew that UCLA was like my number one because I went to UCLA prep. And I just felt that even though I think a place like UCLA would have otherwise felt so intimidating for me. Like And because I did that summer program as an undergrad, as a sophomore, and felt such a connection to like the faculty and the office of outreach, I was like, this is where I almost like envisioned myself as a student there already. So it was
That's
like
awesome.
my blueprint. And I think that's part of manifesting is when you're like, when I think of being a med student, I see myself in this literal CHS lecture hall.
Yeah.
That's why I always tell pre-meds, like, do as many summer programs as you can.
Yeah.
Go to these places, like, normalize being on campus.
Yeah.
Normalize talking to medical students, because it's it feels like such an other world, that the more you can do these programs, the more it's like a natural progression.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think I probably did that more with UCSF, like manifesting. Like I remember in master's year thinking like, could I actually be there for training, and like planting that seed and starting to see it in my mind, and like going to the mission and like, oh, is this like where I would live?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were already sort of like envisioning yourself there.
Yeah.
So that it was a very natural progression for you when it came time.
It was like a convincing yourself you can do it almost. Like,
yes,
that's what
manifesting
manifesting is, right? Yeah.
That's
like,
exactly what it is.
This can happen.
Yes. It makes it in your reality, in the future reality. I did feel that way about UCSF family medicine. Like when I went there, the chiefs at the time, I don't know if you ever met the chiefs.
I think I know which ones you're talking about.
I just felt such a kin to them, and like I wanted them to walk me through residency, just like this mother warmth. And that was like a huge reason that I ended up choosing. I was like, yeah, it meets all the requirements. It's like an amazing program, and the values are aligned, and the chiefs really like did it for me.
Yeah, and everyone has different needs and preferences, but I think both of us being very much like community people, the relationships and the people there are actually a huge part for both of us.
Huge. Especially because I was going to be moving there from Southern California away from my family. Like I didn't know anybody in the Bay Area.
Oh yeah, that's a huge change.
When you're a resident, you literally have to
go
arm yourself. Like think about where you're going to be most successful, like environment wise, you know, like if I could do it again, I'm so glad that I went to UCSF, but I think for how hard it was, I would have also been very happy staying. I
feel similarly. Like I try not to imagine what my life would have looked like had I been in LA. But I think it's just because this is home base for us and we're so happy here.
Yes. And I appreciate it because I left.
Yeah.
And all these other things. But I also think it's a smart decision if you're like, I want to be around home because I want someone to cook for me and take care of me.
Be near my family. Especially if like illness occurs.
Exactly. Or someone is sick. But also for some people whose families are very like, there's a lot of drama, or maybe they're just like high intensity, that may be better for them to go away.
To step away.
Yeah, everyone's really different.
It's actually an interesting topic that we bring up, because I think about like last year around this time, I was reflecting on, did I make the wrong decision going to UCSF? Should I have tried to stay in LA? And would I be happier? But to our point of how much community and people matters, I couldn't imagine my life without the friendships I made in residency and the attendings that I got to know. And so again, like knowing your values and what's important to you, for me, it was community. And then when walking away, I'm like, that is really what I took from it. And I'm so glad that I made that decision.
Yes, I agree with you. You cannot ever be like anything was a mistake.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think one of my values is pushing myself.
Yeah.
Like I knew UCSF. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that was the pinnacle.
Same.
I said, whatever's the best, that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
You know, just
this
as
is going to push me to the next level.
This is going to push me. And yes, it did. Like I was out of my comfort zone. I was like literally the dumbest person on rounds, or like when you're talking to specialists, and like
we all feel that way. We all feel that way.
It's kind of like when you're like, how do you make yourself better? And it's like, surround yourself around people where you're the dumbest person in the room.
Yeah.
Like that is what going to UCSF was like for me. And I feel like it pushed me. So on that alone, it's like I was living in my truth in that way. And that's all you can really do.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? I can't remember her name, but she was on Lewis Howe's podcast, and she talks about how to be charming.
No.
So she says the winning combination of how to be charming is warmth and competence.
Oh, great.
And I think that is like a huge factor you can bring into your interviews. Like you were saying, smiling, looking people in the eyes, saying hello, thank you, sending a handwritten thank you note.
Yes.
And also leading with what you're most proud of in your application.
Yeah. Oh my God. That basically sums up our tips. Be warm and competent.
Exactly.
Prepared.
Thank you so much for joining us and walking through this journey as we relived our interview stories and for some advice about getting ready. If you have any other questions or you just want to give us feedback or share a win, you can always slide into my DMs at Dr. Chantal Lunderville on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok and all of the platforms. And hopefully we'll see you in our next episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.